We're arriving in La Paz, and as you can see, there's a huge crowd of people. What a great surprise. It's so nice of them to welcome us.
Este es el paso del
Let's take this opportunity to look back at some legendary moments in the history of this event. Starting on the 26th of December 1978, Thierry Sabine sees his dream come true. In Paris at the Place de Trocadero, the very first Paris-Dakar is launched. 170 competitors take off on a mad adventure at a distance of 10,000 kilometers on the tracks of Algeria, Niger, Mali, Upper Volta and Senegal. The greatest adventure for the end of the century. Hitting African soil brings a magnificent contrast of civilizations, traditional villages travelled through by men of another era on their fast machines.
Oh, sand. I'll never get used to sand. I hate sand.
Looking back, the bikes and the clothes are of another time. Cowboy boots and leather pants. A tough rally at the height of the expectations of founder Thierry Sabine.
Now, concerning the difficulty of the event, I chose it, so it's my fault. I sent you here. Concerning sand, well, that's just racing. I often say that in a race like the sailing Route du Rhum, when the competitors are swept by giant waves, they don't complain to the organisers.
The Moreau brothers tackle the race in their Renault 4. It would take them 4 editions to win the rally. It was a totally unknown quantity, and all competitors found it incredibly difficult. That year there were no individual categories. All vehicles competed for a single overall classification. With the best car, a Range Rover, driven by Genestier, finishing 4th, behind 3 bikes. The very first Dakar is won by a young rider called Cyril Neveu, who would go on to become a legend of the rally. For this first experience, times and standings didn't really count and seem rather symbolic, the goal being to live this mad adventure and discover a continent with all its wonders. The competitors were pioneers. Few at the time imagined that the Dakar would continue for nearly 40 years and counting.
Well, now let's look at some of the great Dakar battles. In 1987, a year after the death of race founder Thierry Sabine, bike riders Hubert Auriol and Cyril Neveu traded blows all the way to Dakar.
Is Hubert far behind? He's had a puncture? Damn.
Neveu anxiously awaited Auriol's arrival on the penultimate stage after news of a crash. The leader had sustained a serious injury, but heroically soldiered on to finish the stage.
I've broken my ankle. Both ankles are broken.
Victory slipping agonisingly through Auriol's fingers.
It was an amazing race. We really battled with Cyril. It was fantastic. He's stronger, and I'm never racing a motorbike again.
J'arrête la moto.
Neveu claiming a 5th title on his Honda, but not one to savour. Fast forward to 2001, and 2 days before the end of the Dakar, Mitsubishi's Hiroshi Masuoka leads Jean-Louis Schlesser in his buggy, but everything changes on stage 19. Schlesser and his teammate Salvador Servia, perhaps deliberately, miss their start times and set off ahead of Masuoka. The Japanese driver now has to pass them both. Well, he manages to get past Servia, but damages his rear left tyre in the process, and that will all but end his chances of victory. Well, his co-driver Pascal Maimon tries to stop Servia, but in vain as it turns out. And this one could have been a lot worse. In the end, the Schlesser team are handed a 1-hour penalty, and victory instead goes to Jutta Kleinschmidt, who becomes the first woman to triumph on the Dakar. On to 2003, and in the 5th stage between Tozeur and Alborma, Russian Vladimir Shagin, the defending champion in the trucks, takes over the race lead from the De Roy dynasty. It's father Jan and son Gerard who is still racing to this day. Well, 2 days later, Jan De Roy and Shagin suffer mechanical problems, handing De Roy Jr. the race lead. The gap between Shagin and Gerard De Roy is now just 2 minutes, with De Roy Sr. well off the pace. But disaster strikes on stage 12. The leader, Gerard De Roy, is forced to abandon after his DAF is destroyed, jumping over a dune. It's heartbreak for the young Dutchman, but his time will come. Meanwhile, Shagin celebrates his 3rd Dakar title.
In 1992, Gilbert Sabine wanted to breathe new life into the rally. For the first time, the finish would not be in Dakar, but in Cape Town, South Africa. This radical change of route provoked unusual situations. Between Namibia and Ruacana in Angola, Bruno Berglund, Vatanen's co-driver, braved the rising water to estimate the depth of this wadi. Only a few hours before, it had been dry. The 2 riders leading in bikes, Stefan Petterhansel and Danny Laporte, crossed, while the others hesitated. Bergland tries his best to indicate the best way, if there is one. The medical car tries to cross and fails. But quickly they accept it cannot be done. What it took to get the Kajiva and the Yamaha across cannot be repeated.
It's impossible to cross alone. Thierry and Gilles helped me. We pushed the bike across the wadi. There were a few journalists too. About 6 of us got the bike through, and we risked drowning the bike with water. So it's impossible. Not everyone is going to have 6 people on hand to get their bike across. It's a real lottery, because you only need the engine to cut once in the middle, and it's finished. There's a huge wadi with a very strong current. It's 3 times wider than this one.
Remarkable scenes. Petterhansel and Laporte are stuck on one side of the river while the others wait on the other. The stage is cancelled. Some press on, but now the 2 stranded riders need to be recovered.
On peut nettoyer avec le... Ils ont avec les tangos.
Oui, mais et l'hélico, vous ne pouvez pas nettoyer.
C'est possible avec l'hélico. Moi je demandais parce que
c'est peut-être un peu lourd.
vous savez ce qu'on dit en pas
1992 was the year Petterhansel won the 2nd of his 6 Dakar titles on the bikes, largely thanks to a performance on the tracks of the Congo, which became legendary. But it was perhaps on the banks of this wadi in Angola that he had his most worrying moment.
I don't like seeing it like that. I'd rather it was in my own hands.
And so to a new century, Dakar 2005. Stage 7, Zourat Tishit. A stage that would go down in history as one of the hardest the Dakar competitors have ever known. Fuel issues, a 660-kilometre stage, a horrific sandstorm. The road to Tishit would be a nightmare for all.
Okay, Dakar is Dakar.
The wide open spaces of Mauritania. Saharan dunes as far as the eye can see. That year, 40% of the riders were newcomers on the rally. For the older competitors, this stage is the toughest in decades. As night falls in Africa, only the very best have reached the finish line, exhausted. The sandstorm will continue all night, and many decide to gather in the middle of the dunes. Some, only some, will carry on, in vain. In the early hours of the following day, the organisers decide to cancel the day's stage. Helicopters are sent to the previous one to look for the lost competitors. 1/3 of them would then pull out of the race.
So Dakar 2017 resumes on Monday with a marathon stage 7 between La Paz and Uyuni. 322 kilometres to cover in the special section with some breathtaking scenery along the way. As the rally heads south on the road to Argentina, we leave you with these stunning images of Bolivia. Do join us again tomorrow.